Hello and welcome to week number 4 of our Fall God Moments sermon and small group series here at Sharptown Church. And now that we're halfway through, I hope that you are learning and growing and that this has been a wonderful series so far for you as we begin to put together some of probably what we've known to be true, that God has broken through inside of our world and makes a difference inside of our life, and there are moments that shape the trajectory of the rest of our life because of what happens within them. Now, some of these moments, as we've talked about, are things that happen to us. We weren't expecting them, we weren't ready, we weren't prepared, but out of nowhere, God broke through. And sometimes in the midst of tragedy, or sometimes just with an incredible blessing, or sometimes just in a way that to make Himself known inside of our world, we're grateful for those moments. There are some, and usually these are the spiritual experiences inside of our lives, that those God moments really came after a season of searching on our part, and trying to find out more, and a hunger that was taking place, and maybe there was something that was building inside of our life and it culminated inside of this God moment, but we were part of the process along the way, and we're grateful for those moments as well. There are some God moments, though, that we don't even recognize them as God moments. Not only were we not prepared and expecting it to be a God moment, but even when the moment itself took place, we didn't recognize the significance right away. Sometimes it takes months or even years for that understanding of how this one moment really shaped and transformed our lives. And so in this small group segment, we're going to talk about moments of decision and how we make those decisions inside of our lives. Now, intentionally, we are not talking about the top 5 decisions of your life. Those things that kind of get the best of our resources and our time and our counsel, and we research and talk to people and get everything that we possibly can to make this right decision. We're also not talking about, though, those thousands of decisions we make each and every day that are part of the subconscious that almost we don't even think about. We're on autopilot and we just do, and our whole lives are marked by decision after decision after decision. What we want to talk about in this session are probably the ones that kind of bump up against those maybe top 5 decisions, but are kind of that next group of decisions. A lot of times these are decisions that have no clear right or wrong answer. You see, I disagree with those who say that, if you just study the Bible thorough enough or pray diligently enough, there's a right and a wrong situation or a decision inside of each and every situation. I think that sometimes there are opportunities that come our way, and we have to trust the people that God's placed in our lives and the wisdom that God's given us and the decision making and the way that we think through that, and we make a decision, and God meets us along the way inside the journey. These are decisions also that normally have a time frame attached. It's not so much like the top 5 decisions of our life where maybe we have enough build-up time to make sure that we've made this right decision. It's so big and so important inside of our lives that we make sure that we take our time in making them. These are the decisions really that come inside of the throes of life. They're thrust upon us. There's a decision that comes our way, and we have maybe just a few days to decide whether we're going to take that promotion. We have just, moments to consider what it is that we're going to do to give mom the care that she needs. And we do our best, and we try to put our best intellect and perspective and the wisdom of other people, but they really just are dropped inside of our laps, and we're forced to make these decisions. I want to share just a couple of ours inside of this video segment. Over the past 10 years, as we've made decisions along the way, and sometimes we've known that these were large decisions that we're making, and sometimes we were just in the throes of life and just making the decision and doing the best that we could where we are with what we had to continue to follow God's plan for our life. These are average, normal decisions. You're probably not going to be impressed by them or impressed by the direction that we took or even the process that we took. But again, I just want to lift up a couple of these for you. In 2001, it was around Christmas time, and we found out that we were pregnant with Caleb, and I was finishing up seminary, and we had made the decision kind of, a year or so in the making that we were going to stay in Kentucky for another year. We had jobs, we could have a baby, could finish seminary, make an easy transition out, and receive an appointment to a church inside of, the summer of 2003 to return to New Jersey. While we were home on break, we stopped at Sharptown and talked to Pastor Doug and realized that there was an assistant pastor position being created. I really began to think through and talk through whether or not we should move forward for our family with where we were, with some things that were going on inside of my extended family, and just to think through what would be the best decision for us. Now, in hindsight, obviously, 13 years later, it would seem like an obvious decision, and certainly we would want to come to Sharptown Church. But at the time, we were wrestling through what should we do, where should we go, where was God leading us, and we kind of had a limited time frame to make that decision. And so we had conversations, and we prayed a lot about it and talked a lot about it, and just began to even trust the process and walk through that. And here we are at 13 years later, and grateful for where God has led. A few years after that, Caleb was turning 5, and he has an August birthday, and Rachel and I were beginning, to walk through, do we put him in kindergarten? Do we put him in preschool? Being a late birthday and kind of a first child, would he benefit from being held back a year and going to full day pre-K and then transitioning to kindergarten? Or do we, stick with kind of the policy that's in place, and he's old enough to attend and he's ready for school, and just to put him in kindergarten? We went back and forth, not wanting to hold him back and scar him for the rest of his life, but also recognizing that maybe the best thing for him might be to hold him back. And after talking through that and talking to some other parents who had made similar decisions, we finally decided that we would hold him back and put him in the same class with Trevor Busby, and they could go through Mannington School together. And it's been a great decision, and one we probably haven't even thought about since, but it had a huge effect upon his life, especially at that time. The third one took place in 2011, and many of you know that I'm currently the president of Delanco Camp. But when that opportunity first came to me, there were a couple things that were really special inside of that. The first was I was only going to be on the board for one more year. At that time, there were term limits in place, and I was entering my 9th year as a board of director, and knew that if I became the president, it would only be for a year. The second thing is we were in a terrible place financially. Our facilities were continuing to go downhill, and we were at a major point of crisis inside of the organization. Now, looking back on it now, it would seem like an obvious thing to say yes and to lead, but that was a stressful decision. Would it be good for a leader just to step in for a year? How much stress would that be to absorb and take upon myself to begin to try to turn around the camp that was there? What's the price that would come at inside of the life of my family or even my ministry at Sharptown? I kept coming back to the phrase over and over, if not me, then who? And it really had little to do with my ability or my placement, but just if that opportunity was in front of me, shouldn't I do my best to jump in at that moment, even if just for a year, and engage? And so I did, and it was a very tough year. I was probably glad to have that next year off in 2012 off of the board before stepping back in 2013 and continuing to lead at Delanco. In each of these three decisions, I can look back and see the hand of God. But when the decision was in front of me, it was one that required, a major decision in a short amount of time, and there really was no clear right or wrong answer. But we trusted inside the leading of the Holy Spirit, prayer and conversations inside of my relationship with Rachel, the counsel of trusted friends and people around us. All these things kind of culminated and helped us to make to do the best with what we had inside of those decisions, and to trust God moving forward. So what are your moments of decision? Or more importantly, what are the things that you utilize that when those moments come that help you make the appropriate decision, that you can feel good, that you can move forward in peace, knowing that God is not only the God who has led you through your yesterdays, and he's the God of tomorrow, but he wants to meet and help us inside of the decisions of today. Have a great group.